Hello, everybody. Again, this is episode 35, if I'm counting correctly, of Scale Up Podcast. This is Dan Eisenberg. I'm really excited to be with you again. There's been a little bit of a hiatus. This is a serious hobby for me, and sometimes I have other things that I really have to do, pressing priorities. And also, I'm always on the lookout for really interesting, exciting, scaling companies to interview, and it takes a little bit of work to find them sometimes. If you have any ideas, just certainly send me a note. You can reach me on LinkedIn, send me a message. And again, the criterion is at least $5 million in run rate or book sales or whatever. We're interested in having on this podcast companies that have the main challenge of how do they grow, be really big, not how do they get the right idea or establish product market fit. And that brings us to our current guest today, who's the co-founder of Natech. We're here in Greece. He is in a city called Ioannina, and his name is a little bit hard to pronounce, is a Greek. Thanasis, that's the easy part. And then Navrozoglu is his last name. If I get, Thanasis, didn't you some grades on my pronunciation?
Well, thank you, Dan. Yeah, the name was spot on. The surname is a little bit more difficult. It's Navrosoglu. It's very hard to pronounce, especially for non-Greeks. Maybe Turkish could pronounce it, but yeah, it's really hard. Right? Yeah. I'm really glad to be here with you. Thank you. So I'll give you a 9.
Okay. I'll take it. I'll take it on a scale of 20 with a scale of 10. I'll take it on a scale of 10. So anyway, we'll stick with Thanasis. And really excited to have him and Natech, or representing Natech here. It's a surprising venture, and we will get into that. But before we get into the company itself, I want to ask Thanasis, I want to ask you a question that I ask everybody. And that is, tell us something about you as a person that we can't find on LinkedIn, and it's nothing to do with the company. Just describe yourself a little bit.
Well, I think that's the most difficult question. It's very hard to, say anything about yourself. I would say I am.
Yourself, age, family, home, etc. And we'll get into the characteristics.
Well, yeah, I would say I think I'm quite curious, but also very unsettled person. I find very difficult to understand and be, let's say, at a static point. I always want to have something around me that challenges me. And that's very, very difficult because I rarely sleep at night.
That's
so having 3 kids is very difficult. Not being able to sleep at nights and having also the kids in the family.
And how old are you?
I'm 43, born in 1982.
So you have a thriving family, 3 kids, and you don't live in Ioannina, and we'll get to, or somewhere near Ioannina, right?
Well, yeah, I live here. That's what I tell to my family, because I live my time doing here in Athens or anywhere else in the world. Yeah, but that is where my home is.
Building a thriving business. Now, without saying anything about you, tell us a little bit, and without saying anything about the numbers, just tell us, what is Natech? What's the pain point that you're trying to address? And I know it's a complex business. Try and package it so that we can understand it in relatively simple terms.
All right. So Natech is building software for financial institutions. That's actually mostly banks. And what we do is we try and build what is called a core banking system, or digital channels of those systems, the web banking, the mobile bankings, and so on, together with a lot of others, like systems tackling regulatory capabilities or requirements, like reporting and stuff like that. Now, this is the essence of what we build here. And on top of that, we wanted to kind of enter what is now called banking as a service. This is the world where financial institutions and technology providers come together, offering something like a combination of those two worlds. And we are entering this space by launching a bank, a digital bank called Snappi. So Snappi is part of what we are offering. And we started the company in Greece and in Ioannina. And
When,
that's
when
one
did
of
you
the
start? Yeah, we'll get into why Ioannina,
yeah.
but what's the pain point that it's a little bit complicated because you have an actual operating business that you're part of, a bank and or neobank that you're part of. You have also you provide the backbone for SaaS for banks, especially small banks, as I understand it, and you also provide banking as a service for financially related institutions that may not be banks, if I understand it. So this complexity, it seems complex to the outside. Can you address that?
Well, it is rather complex as a context or as a also as a idea, but at the same time, this is what we're trying to solve. A rather complex world demands for something a lot more simple. But you cannot come to simple ideas unless you have a really complex problem. So, this is what we're trying to do here, and we are trying to simplify things. And banks or financial institutions, they need to focus on what they do best, and that's servicing their clients, having a really business model, and so on. And the technology should be offering them those tools that they can utilize and make it work. And that's what we're trying to do here.
So
So let us
basically,
do the thinking.
we're telling to the banks, I'm going to say this as a statement, but it's really a question. So you're telling to the, let's say, small and medium-sized banks, particularly if I understand it, you're saying, look, you can't compete on technology. It's going to be really expensive, very difficult to develop all the back-end technology you need, which is very complicated. We can do that. We can do that. We can provide that platform for you and make you focus on the front end, so to speak, your service and all the other things that are related to being a bank. That's the question. That's the SaaS part of the service.
Yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is, let's say that somebody really builds it today and has really an amazing model and amazing technology stack or whatever. The thing is, can they maintain it? Can they upgrade it? Can they move forward? And this is the element that we really bring to those guys on the table.
So in a way, you're future-proofing, in a sense,
Yes, yes, yes.
technology. Let us be on the front end. Let us be dealing with, I'm just making this up, AI or crypto or other kinds of security issues. And the actual operational service as well.
Correct. Because actually, a bank is like a living organization. It constantly evolves, and the people out there that who are using banks or any financial services, they need constant upgrades. So that is not only about terms of products; it's about the way you interact with your bank. And this is really difficult for any institution to constantly be upgrading themselves unless they really, really invest in so many different things. And this is what we're trying to address here.
So so let's just shift over for a second. We're not going to get too technical, but the BaaS, by the way, it's the first time I had heard the term banking as a service. It makes a lot of sense. BaaS is what is providing a similar kind of back end, if you will, but not to banks, to fintech players. Is that accurate? And say a little bit about how that's different.
Well, the banking as a service is quite a broad term. It can be like things like embedding finance. So embedding finance or embedded finance, as we call it, as product, offering financial services through your whatever offering, or enabling institutions offering something additional on top of what they're offering now, but always involves technology with banking related capabilities. So, you need to have a sponsor institutions or a financial institution that is regulated as a bank combined with technology. So whatever you do in those two worlds and requires both tech and both financial capabilities, we call it, banking as a service because it has this subscription-based element. So, either could be transactions or, customers or volumes. It has to have some sort of, sizing based on utilization of the service.
So how much of an overlap in your technology and in your platform is there between the SaaS and the BaaS?
Well, the BaaS is like a supercharged SaaS. So everything is subscription based. We mean that we you get services for paying for it, or some sort of contribution. But if it is banking related, so you need capabilities that the bank only offers, we call it banking as a service. So it's like SaaS with a layer on top of it.
So you can use some of the same department, the same people, the same technology, at least some of it. And maybe
Yes.
there's another layer that's unique to the BaaS that the SaaS doesn't need, or something along those lines. Let's back up, because I want to get didn't want to get too technical, but I have some questions about not the technology, but about why you and not somebody else. We'll get to that in a second. But first of all, tell us the story now of Natech with only the numbers, just by the numbers. What?
Oh, all right. Yeah. The numbers sometimes tell the story and also they don't. So it's very difficult to just use the numbers, explain company. But I would say, yeah, it's a number.
Okay, we'll give you a chance to explain the story too, but I just want snapshot numbers.
Right. Okay. So 2003 was built over 23 years of constant evolution. That's another number. And around 200 people. That's another headcount. 6 countries more or less that we have boots on the ground. So Greece, Switzerland, Germany, Israel, UAE, Italy, and so on. 11.5 million of revenue in 2025. Expected to go around 18 million in 2026 in terms of revenue. We are aiming for 35% profitability, and we're gonna be like 180% year-on-year growth for the coming couple of years. So I try to use only numbers.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So, the growth of about 60% that you're in right now. So why you? It sounds like the kind of business that you might have competitors. I would venture a guess saying you have quite a few competitors around the world. So why you? Why Greece? Why Ioannina?
Well, that's another very difficult question. Well, there are around 40 players globally building systems or software for financial institutions. 40 recognized. I mean, they can be more than that, but identified. I would say around 40. Now, Gardner and Forrester would agree with me. Now, this is a very difficult and challenging, let's say, domain, the financial services and the banking sector as a whole. But we have so many financial institutions out there. It's tens of thousands. Just in Europe, I would say there are around 5,000, 4,500 financial institutions. There are, really, really that many. And technology is really the backbone. I mean, they have the capabilities, they have all of those challenges to overcome. They have the regulator, they have to build trust and so on, but they are built on top of technology. We don't have those books and doing bookkeeping physically anymore. And this demands constant upgrading, constant changes, and constant innovation. But you can innovate from anywhere. You don't really have to go in any place particular to do things. You can be in a village, you can be in your hometown, you can be, of course, in Central Europe, you could be in the States. What really changes is your clients, how easy it is to have physical meetings with people. But other than that, what you really need is, capable people, like-minded, high caliber mental capacity, good universities to build, to innovate or think about new ideas and build things. Now, that really is not an obstacle. You can build your company wherever you want to. Now, what really makes it a little bit more challenging is to grow out of some peripheral city or even to expand to other regions and so on, because there's also an element of trust of human nature. Greeks would probably believe that another Greek company or a Greek speaking person would be easier for them to serve. Likewise, if you are in a US-based institution, you would probably want to talk to English. But language is not a barrier anymore. So that's another barrier that was not really a barrier. And but the thing is, if you have really big competition, that becomes a really very nasty thing to overcome. Let's say that you are, like, say, in Geneva, there are a lot more, many institutions, but also you have 2 or 3 large vendors sitting, right next to you. That will be very difficult to overcome. But you have to build this liability into an asset. And we try to build this liability of being in a peripheral city, not very well known, into an asset. So this is now a marketing thing that we use. We are built out of Ioannina, born in Ioannina, built for the world. You can call it the way you want. And it is a distinctive characteristic. So we started here because it had a university. It had actually, at that point in time, one bank located here. Now we have 2 banks headquartered in Ioannina. And, it was the first client. And then secondly, the people, if you've tried to build an ecosystem and people have this fresh idea and this mindset, or we're building something new, we're not copying, why not us? This sense of community is helping you a lot. And if you invest and build this community for various reasons, then you don't let it die. Of course, you want to further cultivate it, grow it, and so on. So that all those elements in place really, really grew Natech, and now it's like a child of ours that we want to grow and see it becoming bigger. Now,
Can I
about why me? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, let me know just for a quick second. So if I understand correctly, you uh, you started, let's say, in blue ocean and blue waters, where you could work with, let's say, Greek banks originally. They felt more comfortable. You had the technological capability, and from there you grew internationally. Is that fair to say? And but now you're competing with those companies based in Geneva and in London and, let's say, New York. You're competing with them. How do you beat them?
Well, the product is one thing. You have to, make relevant product. Of course, it has a standard which is higher than what the market would really think as a good product. So you have to really beat the standards. But at the same time, you have to have some competitive advantages. So we are really focused on the size of the banks that we're servicing. It's not like another offering. It has to be very specific for this niche market that we're servicing, and that's the smaller size banks, or the banks that would really want to launch very, very quickly, very fast. And this is where we excel at, launching fast. And we kind of understand the needs of those guys. And that's really, really difficult. So if you have a really big institution servicing a wide range of institutions of, Dubai, in Mumbai, in Greece, in whatever, and they are 1,000 branches or 200,000 people, it's very different to servicing the smaller bank that needs to be really fast. They need to be efficient in launching things. They need to have people wearing too many hats, and this is exactly what our system does.
So your differentiation is speed. Is it also what you offer, the technology as well?
Yeah, it is. It is because it's a front to back system, as we call it. So it covers all elements of those institutions, and that's also an element why we're so fast in deploying it. But also, and another thing is, smaller sized or more agile banks cannot really afford lengthy processes. They need to be immediate, fast, snappy, whatever. They have to be thinking ahead of the curve. And that's what we offer in terms of the technology. The technology allows them to operate 24/7 in a really efficient way.
Yeah,
That's part.
I read 90 days deployment on one of your documents, which is pretty amazing. And I can imagine that a small bank doesn't have the patience or the horizon to wait for 2 or 3 years. Now, so let's come back to why you and how you've maintained this, how it got started. and how you've been able to build an incredible team that really delivers, but now you're globally competitive, right? So tell us about yourself and how you connected with
Yeah, well, I think yeah, I'm trying to understand what actually company is all about, because it's actually about the people, the people that you employ. It's not about assets, because assets is, in this kind of a company, it's people, and you have ideas, you have people, and have energy. So now it all started, of course, in Greece, because of some interaction with some bankers that were trying to promote a product of theirs, uh, short-term lending product. And we had this idea of how technology can really be helping them in doing proper analysis and credit scoring and so on. And then we built a core banking system out of well, very little, let's say, knowledge about the domain. But essentially, we grew through people, through partners, and through our clients themselves, who co-developed what we were building, because they were giving us ideas, they were training us. I didn't even know what buying or selling assets or liquidating meant. I couldn't understand terminology. We had to come really close to those guys. And nowadays, Natech is all those 200 people that are combining our ideas and so on. And is all the intellectual property is actually intellectual capability. And I cannot tell anyone that this is me or my brother or anyone else working here. It's like a team. Now, this team is constantly evolving. You have new additions. You have, of course, people uh, finding other places to work, like other ideas and so on. That what is the glue is the common purpose and the common sense. Now, it's very hard to explain how this is evolving, because it's like an organization. I mean, you have an ear, it listens to hears noises, and you have a mouth that you can talk, and you cannot really separate those two things, because they have an interconnection, which is the body and soul. And this is like this organization.
how,
Um,
how would you describe? So it sounds like you're talking in a way also about culture. And can you describe the culture of Natech and how you built it? And I guess another question would be, how is it somehow related to the Greek culture?
It is. It's a very good question again. It is related to Greek culture, because uh, in the beginning, the sense was we can also build it. We were seeing other ideas or other companies, and we were being challenged for being smaller guys, not being in smaller team. As I said, not in a capital of Europe or whatever, or in the States. It was challenging, and this you know constant battle to prove yourself was also part of the culture of the first team, that we need to prove ourselves that we can build it. Now, this is a little bit about Greece, because we have been through challenging times. Last decades, we had the financial crisis, and that also gave this sense that of also belonging, and also the sense that we should prove ourselves. Let's come together. Let's tell the people, tell the world that we can build something. We're not just the pariahs of those walls, just using the BAMI of the lenders in other countries. I think it really helped a lot. And nowadays is changing a little bit, but still we have this element of everybody was telling us we cannot make it, and we have to prove ourselves, no matter the country or the institution we're trying to serve. But it is a little bit moving into the way into let's build something innovative, let's think out loud. So everybody who was joining the company, I remember telling them, I don't know have answers about everything. You have to provide ideas, and if you have a great idea, just test it. And that was always the case. And I think this is the main cultural element that nowadays runs through the organization. Please test your ideas. You may think better than everybody else does, so don't be afraid.
It's interesting. It's that you hear that a lot these days as almost a management philosophy, but I've never heard it as something that evolves from a culture, especially a culture that is facing in 2010 and for an extended period of years, facing an ongoing crisis. Maybe Israel's has some similarity there, but the need to be, let's say, agile, flexible, have a I can do it attitude, and all that within a background where things aren't going very well outside. Sounds a little bit like an important part of your cultural experience, let's say.
I totally agree with you. Israel has this mindset as well, and you tend to see with the companies there that are building, global scale things and global scale products, and it's also a very small country, similar size in terms of population, by the way.
So we have to talk a little bit about Snappi, because you have the technology platform, you're providing it to customers, but you're also a partner in this new, I guess you call it a neobank, Snappi. You also have a major BaaS customer, it appears, in Greece called OPAP. So let's talk a little bit about your experience, first of all, in framing that joint venture with Piraeus Bank, which is a much, much, much larger organization. You're relatively small. What were some of the challenges in creating this kind of partnership, and what have you learned from Snappi?
Well, Snappi was really, really a big bet and a transformative, let's say, event for Natech. In 2022, we were actually 2021, we were trying to find a banking license to enter the banking as a service world. So we were really knocking on doors of other financial institutions that would have an international branch that they didn't want to use, or they were merging with another or acquiring another bank and they didn't need the license or something like that. We didn't know exactly how it would work, you can buy a banking license, because at that point in time, it was almost impossible to launch your new bank or apply for a new banking license. It has not been done before. We didn't know of any case that had been done. So we went to Piraeus, and those guys were really interested in launching a fintech, as they were calling it, outside of Greece, and they were in the process of doing something for the younger people, the tech savvy people, and so on. So we told them our idea. We presented the idea of building a neobank that would work for the banking as a service and so on. And they liked the idea, but they were really, as I said, disruptive, because they were eager to disrupt themselves and compete against the organization that they were running. Piraeus was a really, really large bank at that point in time, and they were having international branches, international presence. But still, they said, okay, let's build something digital, disruptive, and compete against the established organization. It was really, really, really impressive. And to be honest, in the beginning, I thought they wouldn't be doing it. They said it would, look at our numbers. We were like 45 or 50 people at that point in time, growing though, but the numbers were, the gap was huge. I think it was the level of the human nature that built this trust. We were trying our best. We said we would commit. We give, our word is our bond to make it happen, and they trusted us. That was really, really amazing. And we started building things really, really fast. And by the time we yielded the results were, evident, I think everybody was kind of satisfied, and they were feeling this, let's say, sense of trust with each other that we can make it happen. And the pace was so fast again, delivering products day by day or improving things. At some point in time, it was obvious that it can fly. And this was a transformative event, as I said before, because we learned a lot. We learned how the big bank thinks, how you can set up a bank, how you can build a bank, what the challenges of our organization, and something also that we had never thought of. Really big organizations partnering with a scale-up institution, building a startup, and not having a CEO that is a founder. We have not done it before. We didn't have literature to read about it, and it was quite challenging. But I think we made it, and it's now one of the fastest growing banks in the Western world, actually.
So Snappi, just tell us, give a snappy shot of Snappi. What is it? I see the stores all over because I'm here in Athens, but tell us.
All right. So they're on board actually till now in less than half a year, I would say. They have onboarded 75,000 customers, which is quite a big number. They aim at having 300,000 customers by the end of this year. And we're launching a new product every single month. And now we had the first really big upgrade. Actually, it was just the day before yesterday of the application, launching hundreds of new features. A new AI assistant. It is becoming AI first as a bank, and it will actually has a lot of partners entering the banking as a service world. They will be launching in other countries in the coming months. So and it has around 120 people already. So it's really really impressive, and it's growing really really fast. And it's also headquartered in Ioannina as we speak.
And are you actually your service providers for Snappi and partners? Are you actually equity? Is it actually literally a joint venture?
It is a joint venture. Yes, we have a strong minority, and Piraeus is the majority shareholder at the moment. And we are also service providers because everything, or almost everything, the core banking system, the mobile banking, the payments and so on, are provided by Natech. We have also a dedicated team working for Snappi. And so yeah, it's a equity holder. We are founders. We have a participation in the board, and a lot of people are also working for the for the systems there. But all of them are in the tech side. We don't do anything on operations or anything else.
Is that deep involvement in an actual operating company and not just providing the backbone? Does that also feed back into your other business, into your more core business of the technology platforms?
It is because it's like an innovation hub for us. So we know that things are working and how things are not supposed to be working, and what are the challenges that the large and fast-paced institution has. So any of our other clients or potential clients, they can really benefit of this know-how because they know what the technology and what the capabilities of this fast-paced institution can lead them to. And of course, it's not a competing institution to other guys, but it's actually something that they can gain from. And they learn. The whole world is evolving, and I find it really exciting.
And customers, I assume, benefit as well. So
Yeah.
So let's now talk just for a few minutes about how you funded Natech over time. How much of it was bootstrapped? How much of it was outside capital? What kind of capital? Looks to me like you raised some debt as well as some equity. Tell us the story of that.
Well, we bootstrapped up. We were bootstrapped, definitely. It was personal money. And also bear in mind that in 2003, 4, there wasn't that much of VC activity, especially in Greece, was a term probably not known at that point. And so everything was personal and personal capital, and all the profits were plowed back to the company because we had to support ourselves. And then at one point in time, we had to be profitable because that was the only reason that we could fund or support our businesses, families, and the only means of funding. But at some point in time, we had to to do this big jump, especially right before Snappi and the agreement with Piraeus, because we had to invest in technology and in people in a faster way. So there were some angel investors, and Haris Adoniou, it was the first investor of ours, who's also on the board of Natech, and he's
Who's that?
Haris Adoniou, a former banker, and he's now a serious investor, angel investor in many companies.
And when did that take place roughly? What year?
2020. It was March 2020, right before the COVID lockdown.
You were 17. You were 17 years old by that time. Your company.
Yeah, the company, yes. Yeah. Not myself. I wish. So we met in Berlin, and he invested, the first round of money in Natech, and then it was the first capital raise in 2021 with external investors. Then also we allowed employees to participate with their own money. That was interesting. And then we did we said, let's do a proper equity round, but we needed the money really fast. And we were not used into institutional investors, doing or taking long times to do due diligence. So we had a convertible bond round of 10 million. And then immediately after that round, we said, you need to think really fast, because money depletes easily. You utilize them as much as possible. And we had liquidity to do things that we were just, thinking about for many, many months or many years, but we could really launch them fast. And then we did another round, another round, and in total raised around 35 million till in 2024, 2025. It was December 2024 till December 2025 was a longer round of eight months. So it was a combination of equity plus debt, low interest, long-term debt. And it never stops. You need always additional money to do bigger things, even though we're profitable.
And I guess the investors were institutional investors at that big round.
A couple of them they were, yes. Some others were family offices. Some other were small VC funds they wanted to follow. Some high net worth individuals, of course, that participated. But things change nowadays. Since we have a really broad cap table of over 70 people, we don't know how the next round will look like. We'll see.
Okay. Well, look, I promise to keep this relatively short. We could talk for a long time because I have a lot of questions, but let me end with the following last question. And that is, if you were to meet your younger self today, starting some kind of business with very big ambitions, what advice would you give your younger self? Maybe even one of your kids. You have 3 children. Believe me, they're going to grow up, and
Well, I think I will tell them not to be afraid of the changes and the challenges they will face. It's, people were telling me how volatile the market is, and you can be really happy one day and literally the next moment you could be really sad and afraid. I would tell them not to be afraid. This is normal, and there are so many changes in the life of a business that you need to overcome. A consistency and really fighting for it is what will keep them alive and make them happy. I didn't know that when I started. I thought that trying hard will always yield positive results. It's not like that. And not being afraid and not never settling, I think, are the 2 main lessons I learned. And I would try to tell myself and my children the same: never settle, never be afraid. That's a really bumpy road.
I think that's a great comment to end our conversation on. So I want to thank you again, Thanasis. This has been a fascinating conversation. Maybe we can meet again in another year, because I have the feeling that things will be really different even in 12 to 18 months at the rate that you're growing, and it'd be fascinating to follow up on that. So, but thank you very much, Thanasis with the unpronounceable last name, and founder of Natech, based in Ioannina, providing primarily backbone technology and platforms for banks around the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. All the best.
So this is Dan Eisenberg signing off. Scale App Podcast. As you know, this is a serious hobby for me. So please share it. I think if you're little, from this, which I'm sure you are if you've gotten to this point, feel free to make comments about it, share this on LinkedIn. I'm going to post this on LinkedIn, and we're going to keep going. We have a few more really interesting episodes and really interesting scaling companies that are lined up for the next few weeks. So again, thank you all very much for being with us on this journey. And again, thank you very much, Thanasis.